As we speak, the EPA and GCSAA are working together, and they are looking to us to provide the list of BMPs that we feel can help protect, let's say, endangered species and water quality protection. The EPA is now working to actually put those BMPs on the label of the tools, the chemicals, and other things that we use to where it would be a part of the process. So you no longer would have a choice to not use that BMP. It would be a part of your program going forward.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Fiella, and welcome to a special episode of the Golf Sustainability Podcast. It's my great pleasure to welcome Rhett Evans, Chief Executive Officer of the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America. In addition to being one of the single most influential people in the industry, Rhett's the only person I know that has literally scaled Mount Everest. He's really a fascinating individual who plays a very important role in the future of the industry, and I'm very excited to have him on our show with us today. Rhett, welcome to the Golf Sustainability Podcast.
Well, thanks, John. I'm looking forward to our time together today.
Well, listen, generally a great place to start is to have you tell us a little about yourself, your career journey, and maybe what your current priorities are as CEO at GCSAA.
Yeah, happy to. Every time I answer this question, I realize that I'm getting older, right? Time doesn't stand still, but what a journey I've been on, starting really with my education, received my master's degree in sports, recreation, and management. And I've always had a passion for those two things. I think they go hand in glove, sports and then recreation. So that led me to starting my career with the Utah Jazz, and an individual by the name of Larry Miller, who was just a progressive entrepreneur, had his hand in a lot of different things and taught me a lot of great lessons when I worked there with the Utah Jazz and the NBA and his other sporting franchises, baseball, hockey, etc. And then from there, I was able to move back home to my great state of Arizona, where I grew up, and had the opportunity to run the commercial facilities division, which was the home of the Chicago Cubs spring training facilities. And then we had all kinds of other recreation opportunities, including golf courses. And that's really where I fell in love with the great sport of golf and all that it represents. We had an 18-hole facility, Dobson Ranch, and a 9-hole facility in Riverview. And I just really saw what golf can bring to communities. I saw what golf can do for the environment and what it can do for families. And the list goes on and on. I hope we get a chance to talk about all of those great benefits that golf brings. But that led me to an interest in GCSAA, and in turn, they had an interest in me. And so here I sit, going on my 16th year with GCSAA. 15 of those, I've been the chief executive officer, so it's been a real thrill to represent the 20,000 men and women that are out there day in, day out, 365 days a year, taking care of the 2 million acres of green space that we have here in the United States that we call golf courses. And so I'm looking forward, John, to talk about what they're doing and some of the efforts that they're doing to make the game better, because at the end of the day, they're essential to the success of golf, what they do. So hopefully that covered your first question there, but it's been a great journey, and I've loved every minute of what I've been able to do in my career.
Yeah, that was perfect. What I didn't know is that you've been CEO for 15 of the 16 years there, which means that you didn't get much of a warm-up period. I guess they recognized talent when they saw it, and they gave you the reins pretty quickly, which is to your credit. You mentioned the superintendents and your membership. I think in a very quiet, unsung way, that your members are really the custodians of the game. And what you do for them as the leading association to support their efforts and advance their skills, I think, is really very important. For anyone who's tuned in who may not be very familiar with the work that you do, can you give us at a high level an overview of the scope of GCSAA's work?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, our members really are the boots on the ground. When you look at, the game of golf, we've got, quite a bit of variety, right? We've got the business side inside the pro shop. We've got the playing side or the tournament side with the PGA Tour. We've got the USGA with the governing side. But really where we rest is on the maintenance and on the upkeep and the responsibility of the golf course itself. And so we have members that are obviously superintendents. We have members that are assistant superintendents, educators, as well as equipment managers. And so that makes up our 20,000 members that are scattered across 78 countries in the world. Obviously, here in the United States, being as golf-centric as it is, that's where the majority of our members reside. But we have, our focus is on them. We have a mission that we live by to serve them, to advance their profession, and really improve communities through the enjoyment, growth, and the vitality of the game of golf. And when we look at that word community, John, it's much broader than just, the community in which you live. We feel strongly that our members need their own community, if you will, of resources, of professional development, of the ability to talk with one another, to gain best practices and to share things. And that's what's really been neat about the history of our association that started in 1926. We'll celebrate our centennial here in next year. And to see how superintendents have come together from the very beginning, even though they can be competitors, even though they can, be working across the street from another golf course, they still share equipment. They still share ideas because of the love of what they do, and they just want to continually improve the course conditions and the playability of the golf course. So it's a pretty neat business to be in and watch the efforts of what our members are able to do.
I've been exposed to trade associations, for my entire career of 40 years in lots of different segments: tech, retail, environmental, and the scope and breadth of the work that you do is really pretty extraordinary. Everything from advocacy to education. There are a couple of areas in particular of what you do that I'd like to drill down on a little, and that's first education and research, because the research that you do is extensive and the education that you do is extraordinary. If someone goes to the website right now, they'll see a list of probably a dozen upcoming webinars or conference calls that your members can sit in on. What's your take on, from an education and research standpoint, how's the work that you're doing evolving? What was it like in the past? How do you see it today? And where do you see it in the future?
Yeah, no, I love that question because, when you look at the side of golf that we represent, the golf course itself, it's ever changing, right? The environment is constantly changing. Mother Nature is our business partner, and she's relentless, right? We've had all kinds of just different weather disruptions, and not to mention the recent hurricanes. But when you start looking at the complexity of drought, whether it's in the southern and western states, and the complexities that creates in terms of resources, et cetera, there's nothing that is stagnant. There's nothing that's the same from year to year. And I think that's really where we try to put our focus in on that research, in on that education, so that it's not stagnant. We're really pushing and trying to push the envelope with innovation, with best practices, so that we can continually adapt to the changing environment. And that's been our focus, and really the bedrock and the cornerstone of GCSAA is our education. You mentioned the webinars, you mentioned, the research, and it's something that we pride ourselves in. Every single day, we're offering some information to help our members. We're funding some sort of research. We're publishing in our golf course management magazine best practices and things and tools that can help our members do their job. So it's never ending because of the changing environment, but that in a way that's kind of fun because it's not stagnant. It's continually evolving.
Yeah. Well, from the scope of industries that I've been involved with, and the number of trade associations that I've been involved with, I have to say kind of what you're doing in that education and research area is as good as I've seen.
Thank you.
And anywhere. Okay, on to best management practices.
Let's do it.
The whole idea of establishing and codifying, right, the ideal way in which to manage these wonderful properties is compelling. It's been an important piece of work. I know it's required in some states, but not required in others. My understanding is there isn't a formal certification or seal of approval that a course will get if they utilize these BMPs or not. So tell us about BMPs. Kind of, where have they been? Where are they now? Where do you see them headed with an eye towards ensuring that these best management practices are not only shared, but utilized in every course under your membership?
Yeah. No, and I think if you look at any industry, or if you even look at just our own lives, right, in terms of how we go about, being a father or a mother, or I mean, you just name it. There's good and bad ways to go about things. And I think what in turf grass research and in turf management, we've got, decades and decades of science and experiments and things that have gone wrong and things that have gone right. And so really all we have done is aggregate that. We've taken, 30, 40 plus years of science and boiled those down into BMPs, right? And they kind of represent, 14 areas of the golf course, whether it's dealing with water quality management, whether it's dealing with nutrient management, pollinator programs, etc. And we've got in these manuals the best of the best. And to my earlier point, there's really no golf course that's similar. The environments are different on the West Coast than they are on the East Coast. And so we've gone ahead and through a lot of work on behalf of our members, architects, scientists, et cetera, established a BMP manual for all 50 states that is unique to their state. So it has the individual regulations, it has the individual nuances that come with living in a certain state. If you take California, for an example, some of the regulations are different than they are in Montana. And so we've adapted those, created them in all 50 states, and that was back in 2020. And ever since then, we've had our sights set on now having those individual facilities adopt their own BMP that is unique to their golf course. And that's a heavy lift. But to your earlier question or point about, certification or, really putting that stamp of approval or seal on it, that is our next phase. And we're working tirelessly to come up with a program that can basically tell the golfers, tell the world that, hey, John and his golf course are striving, and that's a key word, are striving to adhere to and manage his golf course to the best of his ability based on these best management practices. And I'm telling you, I'm seeing the fruits of our labor. It's been really beneficial to be able to bring a member of Congress out to a golf course who really has no idea of what we're doing. Let's just take something around water quality protection. And, they have this misnomer that, wow, we're just, throwing chemicals on a golf course and it's running into the drinking water. And when we start to show them buffer zones, when we start to show them the equipment that has precise GPS technology of where they're dropping the fertilizer and how they're, avoiding areas of contamination and runoff and all of the practices, these best management practices that our members have put into place, they walk away going, wow, this really is a science. You are really professionally managing this land. And that's our ultimate goal, is to be able to live, work, and play in a place that's safe and that's fun and that's a part of our lives. And that's what we're attempting to do with the BMPs.
That's great. Well, look, the value of those BMPs and their broad scale implementation could really be a game changer. From other industries I've been involved with, anything that would allow you to benchmark. And as you move forward with this, if there was a way that, you could not only establish the BMPs, but with data, kind of monitor their results and allow courses to benchmark kind of how they're doing against a peer group. People by nature are competitive. And I think when you get folks trying to make sure they're at the top of their class, it advances things. How is it determined if the best management practices are required or not? So, for example, I believe in my state of Florida, the state association has adopted it, and they're trying to get all their courses on board with it. Is it? I suspect you can't wave a magic wand and say, okay, now these are going to be required. Like, what will have to happen for everyone to really be on board with this to the degree that you'd like to see them on board?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's certainly problematic, right? Because not everyone, has the same ability, the same level of staffing, time, resources, et cetera. But one of the things, and I'll just share it here on this podcast, that when we work with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, we've established a memorandum of understanding that has been really beneficial, where we're having these discussions and being on the front edge of these conversations of what are the best BMPs that golf needs to employ to protect the environment. And they've looked to us for what those are. And so literally, as we speak, the EPA and GCSAA are working together, and they are looking to us to provide the list of BMPs that we feel can help protect, let's say, endangered species and water quality protection. The EPA is now working to actually put those BMPs on the label of the tools, the chemicals, and other things that we use, to where it would be a part of the process. So you no longer would have a choice to not use that BMP. It would be a part of your program going forward. And that was going to happen with or without us. And therefore, we thought it was best to be proactive versus reactive in that space, and to share with them that golf is different than ag. I think they were just going to come in and slap a bunch of ag BMPs on a golf course, and we know that doesn't work. And so fortunately, we have the science that talks about turf grass and how it's it can filter runoff, it can filter pollutants, that turf grass can become a buffer. And so just in explaining that, we're able to do some good things and make it more, I guess, practical for managing a golf course versus a cotton field or a cornfield.
Yeah, that approach is so smart, because the regulations are coming, right? If you look at the US versus Europe, the regulatory environment in Europe is so much further along in terms of what can and cannot be used. And the thought of here in the States, as the regulatory environment advances, having GCSAA with a seat at the table, having some input and influence on that just makes a world of sense. The EPA, my background is in corporate sustainability, which I'm kind of now bringing to the golf industry. And in the renewable energy sector, EPA has this great awards program where once they've had the goals and standards set up, they actually have these recognition programs in place. And once your program with EPA is fully unwound, you may want to talk to them about some sort of joint awards and recognition program, which, my sense is they love to do that type thing.
Yeah, that's great. I'll make note of that.
So good luck with that going forward.
Thank you.
I'm intrigued by the First Green program. I don't think it gets a lot of recognition, and it's once again just a very smart idea. Can you tell us about the program and kind of what you hope to accomplish with it?
Yeah, John, I could spend, an entire segment talking about the First Green. It's so exciting to watch the growth of this. And for those that are unfamiliar with it, it's pretty simple. It is a STEAM education program. And STEAM, if you're not familiar with that, you probably have heard the term STEM,
right,
which was science, technology, engineering, and math. And now really a new evolution of STEM is STEAM. So we've added the A into that, which now includes the arts. So science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And, it is what's being taught, right, in the school systems, and rightfully so, because it covers the gamut of opportunities for careers. And all we have done is simply taken that concept and turn the golf course into a learning, living laboratory. And so the kids that are learning these disciplines in their school systems, whether it's K through 12, we work with the school district, get the kids on a bus and bring them out to a golf course. Some of them have never stepped foot on a golf course, including their parents as chaperones or their teachers, et cetera. And we have established by working with the school systems and the teachers association, basically pods and opportunities for the kids to move around the golf course and do such things as measure stream velocity, or look at and count, wildlife, and do some biology in and around that. And it's just been tremendous. We have over 18,000 students that have gone through the program thus far, and it's continuing to grow. And in fact, we're now in, I think, 42 states. We should be wrapping up and having it in all 50 states here within the next year. And what it's really doing, which is really, I think, neat, number one, is helping us, really tell the story of what superintendents do and their profession, which is intriguing to a lot of these students. But also, as important, is the opportunity to show them that this golf course is really an environmental asset, not a liability to the community. So they walk away having measured and looked at the water quality, for example, and have done a water quality test and have seen that it's not polluted, that it's cleaner than the water that's entering the golf course. And so, they walk away going, wow, I didn't know there was a lot of wildlife and that you had pollinator programs here and that you really care about this stuff. And so we're focused right now on high school students and hopefully giving them an opportunity to get a summer job, to work with our members, ultimately become superintendents and get on a career path to this wonderful career. So it's been the springboard of a lot of different activity and has opened up a lot of doors for people. So we're super, super excited to be able to host these first screen events around the country.
Yeah, great program. And it's got the long game in mind, right? Because the kids coming through the program now, you're really trying to seed, if you will, future members and attract people to the game. So great program. And I wanted to make sure that I gave you an opportunity to talk about it. One thing I haven't given you an opportunity to talk about we've got to put a plug in for it. And that's your show, which takes place every year. I think this year it's in February in San Diego. I attended for the first time last year, and it was awesome. I loved that sustainability hub you put together. Educational program was just off the charts, and I'm looking forward to attending again in San Diego. But tell us about the show. I think some people will be blown away with how large it is.
Yeah, it's it's the largest show of its type, over 11,000 attendees, and we really bring together all those that represent the golf course itself. And so all of our partners, that provide the iron equipment, or the the Syngentas, the New Farms and Bayers, they're all there. Certainly our members are there, and the focus is on education, as we've been talking about on this call and on this podcast. But when you look at what is changing, whether it's dealing with regulations, the environment, et cetera, we're on the cutting edge of sharing some of the technology, some of the things that have new products that are coming out. All of that gets to become a part of the show and is talked about and learned about, including, hands-on opportunities. We have facility learning tours that go on throughout the area in San Diego. We've got, again, a golf tournament. We've got all kinds of fun stuff that you mentioned, the sustainability showcase. And that's not only an opportunity to educate our members, but those in San Diego, right? To invite the general public to come out and to see what we're doing with different grass types, how they're becoming more drought tolerant and less susceptible to disease, et cetera. So just that opportunity alone has really been a great platform for us to use this show to help educate people on the benefits of golf and to really demonstrate what our members do day in and day out.
It's extremely well done. The fellow that runs that for you, by the way, he's an exceptional trade show operator. And yeah, the programming I found really interesting. Like when I go out on those first 2 days, you've got those intensive sessions. It's either 2 or 3 hours actually at a course where you're touring the course and seeing how things have been implemented. There are the equipment in-depth sessions. And then there are the classroom sessions where you've got dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of those. So great event, and I look forward to attending in February.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, Rhett, I like to say sustainability is a team sport, meaning no one can really get done what needs to be done on their own, and kind of partnerships with suppliers and associations are critical. Tell us about your point of view on the role that partnerships play in what you're trying to get done in terms of advancing sustainable practices in the industry.
No, it's huge, and I love your terminology there, team sport. Because it really is. When you look at the complexities of a golf course and a golf operation, it really involves everyone. And I think this has been, to be quite honest, one of the bigger challenges, right? To bring everybody together, with that common goal. I think we're doing better. I think we're bringing more people together, more partners together. For an example, we have the GCSAA Foundation, which is all centered around the environment. We have the USGA now on that board. We have the PGA of America on that board, and we have the PGA Tour represented on that board. And so that's been really refreshing to be able to have those individuals and those entities around the environmental table talking about and helping us with some of our key initiatives that really benefit everyone in golf. And we're broadening that reach, working with organizations that represent the golfers themselves. I think that's one of the components that we've done a pretty decent job of, talking to ourselves and doing some things amongst the associations. But at the end of the day, the end users, the golfers, the millions of people that play this game, I think they need to have a better understanding their sport, of their hobby, and how they can become involved in it. When we look at other recreational opportunities, whether it's hunting or fishing or anything really that's dealing with the outdoors, those end users are connected to it because they realize they have skin in the game, that they want their hobby, their recreational opportunity to be protected and to be there for the long term. And I think golfers need to be a part of these conversations. And so that's one of the things we've got on our list of to-dos, is to really get the word out there to golfers that this is serious, that you need to be a part of the solution and really help us protect these 2 million acres of green space.
Yeah. I really like the way you tied golfers into it. And there's a question I'm going to ask you in a moment that kind of gets to some of that. But from the supplier side, when I attended your show, there were some suppliers and booths that had a sustainability focused message at their booth, kind of not as many as I would have hoped. What's your take on the supplier side of things in terms of they're becoming more sustainability oriented and focused?
I think it's obviously, an evolution, and it's slow moving, right? But I think that, given the current climate, no pun intended, it's really awakened more people to this fact that, and I keep talking about water because it's a big deal, right? I mean, water is used in life. And if we can't manage it appropriately, we're not going to have it in certain areas. And so, if we don't all come together, to go back to your earlier point about, working together on this, that it's not just the superintendent's role to figure this out. We all have to be, working with, each other to be able to demonstrate and to advance, how we're going to manage water. And, I love the quote that it takes each of us to make a difference for all of us. And it's really true that we can't stand alone on this thing. And so, it's probably my soapbox is that let's get involved, be supportive of, and be educated on, for an example, at a golf course, the turf may be a little bit drier and, it's okay. The ball's going to roll further, and firm and fast is good, but, just these little small practices that we can put in play make a big difference. In fact, we've decreased water use by 29%, over the course of the last decade and a half. And so, and yet I think the playing conditions and surfaces are better than they ever have been. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on this one, but we all the associations, golfer suppliers need to wake up to this fact and be a part of the solution.
Yeah. So kind of a coattail on that. And, as we talked, I had to figure out a way to weave Mount Everest into the conversation. Having had the extreme good fortune of hearing you present on that personal journey, which is just unbelievable and very inspiring. You talk about everyone thinking in terms of what's their Mount Everest, what's the challenge they're going to tackle. When I think about the industry, I think the industry's collective Mount Everest is to try to help shift perception of the game from, golf is bad for the environment, golf is bad for society, to golf is good for the environment and golf is good for society. You've nibbled around this, but I want to give you a chance to get into it in a little more detail. What do you think is going to be necessary to collectively, as an industry, reach that summit to where golf is widely recognized as good for the environment, good for society?
Yeah. No, I love your metaphor there, your analogy, because obviously it's near and dear to my heart. Just finished climbing Mount Everest, and it was a beast, right? It just right when you felt like you were gonna, you're gonna looked around the corner and there was another mountain, right? A little false summit, and you had to keep going. And sustainability is just like that. It's a destination. It's not a journey. We always have to keep that in mind, that you're never there, right? You can always do better. It's that pursuit of excellence. And I think, when you look at where we've been, we've come a long ways. We've done a lot of really good things. I look at the data that we've collected. I mentioned the water use being down 29%, but when we get into, some of the other areas of nutrients, we're down 41% on nitrogen. When we looked at land use, we've taken, areas that used to be in play that nobody was hitting a ball to, or at least they shouldn't be hitting a ball to, and we've put it back to native areas, et cetera. And so we've made a lot of great progress in this space. But to your point and to mine, there is still a long ways to go. And I think we can't get discouraged, but we've got to stick to the basics. And the basics for us are research. You need to know, what you're dealing with and where you need to go. And then that leads to the education, first and foremost, of our members, and then the golfers and these other entities that we've mentioned. And then once that education has been consumed, it's now implementation time. And I think, that's really where the rubber meets the road, is now having this collective group agree that, what we're going to do, we're going to implement this practice at our facility. And that's where we've run into roadblocks. That's where we've hit some false summits, where some clubs just aren't buying into the methodology. They're not buying into, some of the needed changes. And then we've got to, continue to push that awareness. And I think, John, to your point, how do we do this? I'll just share with you just real quickly one success story or one initiative that is working extremely well to get this message out, and it's called our Grassroots Ambassador Program. There's 535 congressional districts in the United States. We've taken it upon ourselves 10 years ago to align a GCSAA member with every member of Congress. And they establish a relationship with them. They invite them out to the actual golf course and the facility in their districts, and they walk around the golf course and they see these things that we're doing. And then they in turn can help us with the right regulations, the right messaging, and the right awareness of how this is really a community asset. It's a $102 billion industry that creates 1.65 million jobs in America. So we've got to keep it for all those reasons, but more importantly for the environmental benefits and just the recreational value that it brings to communities around the states.
Yeah, that's great. Coming into this conversation, my point of view was GCS is really the entity best positioned to be the tip of the spear and lead this effort. And as a result of this conversation, I am now convinced that's the case. I didn't know about your expansion of the foundation. And if with the foundation, you now have the PGA, the USGA, you've got all of these groups supporting this collective effort to advance what you're doing, to use a climbing analogy, I guess, you could be the Sherpa, if you will, of bringing the industry along to make that vision a reality. So I'm excited to hear about what you're doing, and whatever I could do at Golf Sustainability to support your efforts, you could count on. So great stuff. When I've heard your talk about scaling Mount Everest, you talk about how as you're coming down and when you come down, it changed your point of view on life, changed your point of view on your family, it changed your point of view on lots of things. How, if at all, Rhett, did your experience conquering Mount Everest influence, inform, or change your point of view on GCSAA and what you need to be doing at GCSAA?
Yeah. No, it really did. I mean, I had some life-changing moments. You spend 50 days up there and you battle a lot of adversity and you have a lot of time to think. And I think when I compare that to, what I'm doing here with GCSAA and what we've been talking about here for a little bit, the environment is a massive mountain. These challenges don't get resolved overnight. They're not just a one step and you're at the summit. It's a continual journey of learning and focusing on what really matters most. And I think in golf, we tend to, and we're guilty of it as well. We kind of chase the shiny little lure and kind of run around and do a whole bunch of different things, but we're really not making a significant difference. And so we really have to focus on those things that are making a difference, that ultimately get us up the mountain. And, when I think about some of those other life lessons that I learned on the mountain is, as you're overcoming adversity, is that, you can't be looking at the finish line. You can't be looking at the summit. You just got to put one foot in front of the other. Every day, make a little bit of a difference. Do something a little bit better. And then eventually we're going to look back, John, and we're going to see the fruits of our labor and realize, wow, we protected this game. We are still enjoying a sport that has brought smiles to millions of people around the globe because of the fact that we didn't let up. We kept climbing, we kept reaching, we kept striving. And I'm so excited, to see some of the innovation and the things that are happening with technology. It's fascinating. We've got autonomous mowers getting rolled out, and just the drone technology and the things that our members now have at their fingertips to manage water and to really understand the data. It's so cool where we're headed. So I'm excited to keep climbing and to provide my Sherpa services to whoever we can to make this thing work.
Yeah, well, look, I could feel the energy right through the screen here. I mean, you're jazzed, and this focus on technology, I think, is key. And I met Matt Muhlenbrook from Hillcrest Country Club at your event last year.
Oh, good, yeah.
And oh my God, is he a whiz at technology and where it's headed? And after the NGF conference last week, I was flying in and out of, so I actually had a chance to visit with him at Hillcrest. And, he reviewed the stuff they're working on. I mean, he is so far out there as an example for how technology can support your efforts. He's kind of living proof, which you've just referenced.
Yeah.
Well, Rhett, this is a point in the conversation where I like to shift gears a little bit and give our audience a chance to get to know our guests a little better. Although, based on the conversation we've had so far, I think people have a real good feel for who Rhett Evans is. But shifting away from GCSA now and talking more specifically about you, I've got a few questions I'd like to. You're obviously a very driven person, but what drives you? What is the fuel for that fire that you've got?
And I think I've referenced it throughout our call, but I really feel that pursuit of excellence, you're never there. And I think that's what drives me, to know that we can always be a little better. And that once we step out of our comfort zone is where we really learn. So that's what drives me, the continual pursuit of excellence.
Yeah, that's great. Great example for many to follow. Who would you say in your life has inspired you most?
Oh, that's easy. My brother, he has Down syndrome. And I get emotional every time I think about him because, he's high on the spectrum in terms of, he knows he has Down syndrome, and yet he still, just strives to make people happy. And he knows that he has a disability, but he's always uplifting other people. And it's so cool to watch. And what an example to me.
That's great. Well, God bless your brother. And he's lucky to have a brother like you, I guess, is what I'd like to add.
Well, thanks. I'm lucky to have a brother like him. That's for sure. He inspires me.
That's great. For someone that's climbed Mount Everest, asking the question, what's the greatest challenge that you faced, is always an obvious one. So take, other than climbing Mount Everest, what's the greatest challenge that you faced, Rhett?
Well, if you're going to take that one off the table, and probably some of the Ironmans and marathons I've done, we'll take those off as well. I'm going to go on the more personal side. And I think being a dad to two wonderful kids has been a challenge, right? In this world where we're pulled in different directions and they are pulled in different directions. And so, it's a fun challenge to have, but that's been a challenge, is to raise two wonderful kids, and so proud of them.
That's great. Ironman events and triathlons. I didn't know uh, about that piece. I almost have to ask, now that you've climbed Mount Everest, what's next? You've done Ironman, you've done triathlons, you've climbed Mount Everest. What's next? Are you going to get in a rocket ship with Elon at some point? Or
that'd be fun. I don't know if I can afford that, but no, I'm working my way around all the 7 continents to finish all the highest peak on each continent. And so I've got 5 done. I have 2 left. So my next venture will be taking me down to Antarctica to climb Mount Vincent down in Antarctica. And then I'll have one left, Carson's Pyramid, and I'll have all 7 in the bag. So that's the next venture.
Where is Carson's Pyramid?
So it's in Indonesia. It's just a small little, I'm saving it for last, to where we can just head down there and do I think it's just like a little 3-day climb, and one of the easier ones of the 7. So we'll do that probably in a couple of years.
Just a little 3-day climb.
Never been a 50-day, I'll tell you that.
That's awesome. What a fascinating conversation with you here, Rhett. You're a young guy. I mean, you may not be thinking yet about your kind of legacy and what do you want to leave behind for future generations. But given how thoughtful you are as an individual, I suspect you may have thought quite a lot about this. When you think in terms of your legacy and what you'd like to leave behind for future generations, what is it that you think about?
Yeah, obviously there's, different aspects and components of that. I think when, we're talking specifically about what we've done here today and, what we're trying to do with GCSAA, it's just what we said, that the legacy is that, hey, we put some programs and services in place that have been monumental and really have shifted the mindset of what golf represents, whether it's the First Green program, whether it's the BMPs, whether it's the Grassroots Ambassador program. I think those are legacy programs that were created by some really smart people here at GCSAA, and they're going to make a lasting impact on the game. When I look at it from a more personal level, or I would say a higher level, it's just my faith. I think that, that's something that you want to leave behind, that people have a higher meaning, a higher purpose. I think we can really get drugged down into the mud and feel that life is complicated, because it is. But hopefully my kids and family know that there's more to it than what we're seeing here.
I can't think of a better note to wrap up the conversation on, Rhett. It's been a privilege and an honor. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your personal story, and kind of what you're focused on at GCSAA. This has been great. Thank you so much. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Rhett Evans is an example of the type of leader that aspired to have conversations with about the future of golf and golf sustainability. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe to the podcast, tell your colleagues and peers about it, and keep tuning in. Thanks for sharing your time with us today, and let's go climb our own respective Mount Everest. Have a great day.